Hello, and welcome to the Channel of Stories. Dear listeners, before we start the story, please subscribe to the channel and give this video a like and share in the comments where you are from. Thank you. Here we go.
The attic of the Kyiv Historical Museum wasn't glamorous, but Anna loved it. As an archivist, she was used to dust, decay, and the faint smell of time. She didn't mind the solitude. In fact, she preferred it. Most days, she worked alone, surrounded by crates of forgotten things, lanterns with soot-stained glass, broken photographs, handwritten ledgers from decades past. But the attic was different. It felt quieter than silence, like it was listening. It was on a rainy Tuesday that she found the box. She'd been cataloging furniture near the back wall, a row of battered desks with drawers that stuck, when her knee knocked something loose. She reached behind an old filing cabinet and pulled out a small wooden box, its hinges creaky but intact. The latch clicked open with a sigh. Inside, a bundle of letters, yellowed and tied with a faded red ribbon. The first was dated April 12, 1923. Her breath caught. She gently unfolded the paper. The handwriting was elegant, slanted script, firm strokes. It spoke of life in Kyiv between wars, between hopes. Observations of strangers, small acts of kindness, the smell of lilacs after rain. And then the signature at the bottom, David Lushko. She flipped through a few more. They were all his. But the last letter stopped her heart cold. It was addressed to her. Not to the future or dear stranger. No. It had her full name. Her exact name. Spelled correctly, even the silent H no one ever got right. And the contents described her. A scarf she'd worn yesterday. The way she'd brushed her hair out of her face while locking the museum door. A joke she'd muttered to herself about the rain. She stood up so fast the box nearly fell. She laughed nervously. Okay. Weird. But she kept rereading the letter until the museum closed. That night, in her tiny kitchen, she pulled out a notebook and wrote back. Dear David, or whoever you are. Congratulations. You got my attention. Now, what kind of magician are you? She left it in the same box the next morning. Just to see. The next morning, Anna arrived early. The attic was dim, shafts of light cutting through the dusty air. Her steps were quiet, reverent. She almost didn't want to look in the box. Almost. She opened it slowly. There it was. A new letter. Her breath hitched. The paper was crisp, the handwriting unmistakable. Still David. Still elegant. Still somehow personal. Dear Anna. I am not a magician. I am a poet. There is a difference, though both know how to trick time. Your scarf was blue yesterday. Your umbrella broke and you cursed in English. You keep your keys in your left pocket, even though you're right-handed. You hum when you're nervous. That's not magic. That's you. Please don't be afraid. I don't know how this is happening either. But the letters come. And when they do, I answer. Because you, whoever you are, feel more real to me than the air outside my window. Yours across time. David. She stared at the letter for a long time. Read it 3 more times. Then sat down on a packing crate, the letter trembling in her hands. Her pulse was hammering, but not from fear. From the strange exhilaration of being seen, not on a screen, not in passing but seen. She should have walked away. Instead, she wrote again that night. David, you're not real. Or this isn't. But I'm writing you anyway. That probably says more about me than you. The next morning, another reply. This time, his handwriting was shakier. More rushed. He wrote of a woman in a cloak who told him to keep writing, that the time will come when she writes back. That must have been me, she thought, with a strange, slow dread. The letters kept coming. And Anna kept answering. She told herself it was just curiosity. Just play. But something was happening. And it felt nothing like a game. The attic became a shrine. Every morning, Anna climbed the stairs like someone visiting a sacred place. And every morning, the box held another letter. Some were short, a poem, a half-thought. Others were long, dense with stories, philosophies, confessions. David described Kyiv in 1923 with the tenderness of someone trying to hold back time. He wrote about coffee houses filled with arguments and smoke, about sharing cheap wine with friends who dreamed of revolutions. He described a little bookstore where he read poems aloud to empty chairs because they listened better than critics. He mentioned bread lines and ration tickets and snow that came too early and stayed too long. But he always returned to her. He asked questions, small, thoughtful ones. Do you believe in fate? Do you still wear that ring on your middle finger? Is loneliness worse when it's quiet or when it's loud? Anna answered every one. She told him about Kyiv now. Its concrete bones and glass towers. Its traffic, protests, ghost stations. She sent him lyrics to songs she loved, stories of the people she passed each day. She wrote about her dreams, not sleeping ones, but the kind that ache in your chest. There were no photos. No phone calls. No voices. Just ink and imagination. But it felt more intimate than anything she'd ever known. She started using real stationery, sealing each letter with wax. Sometimes she'd tuck in a pressed flower or a tiny sketch. He sent poems. She memorized them. One day his letter ended with, "There is something holy about longing, it keeps you from settling for anything less than wonder." She wrote back, "Then I must be the most devout woman alive." It scared her how deeply she missed him between letters. How much of her day revolved around the box. It wasn't normal. But nothing had ever felt more right. The discovery came on a Wednesday. Nothing unusual about it. She was processing a batch of photos labeled Poets Writers, Kyiv, 1920 to 1926. Standard archive work. Monotonous. Until it wasn't. She was scanning the third photograph when her heart stopped. Black and white. Slightly faded. A group seated around a long wooden table. 8 people. Men in wool coats. Women with wide eyes and firm mouths. Smoky light caught mid-drift. And there, unmistakably, David. Mid-laugh, one hand gesturing in the air like he'd just made a joke. But next to him, Anna. She was there. Same eyes. Same shape of her mouth. The exact dimple on her right cheek. She wore a simple vintage dress, and a beret tilted to the side. Her hand rested lightly on his. She blinked. Looked again. Still there. Her own face, preserved in a photo nearly 100 years old. It felt like the ground tilted. Her chest hollowed out. She printed the image and stared at it for hours that night. She tried to remember if she'd ever been in a costume photo, some reenactment, a museum installation. But no, this wasn't trickery. She looked like herself. More than any mirror had ever shown. That night, she didn't sleep. She wrote, "David, I found a photo. A real one. Of us. From 1924. I'm in it. We're touching. I don't remember it. But it's real. What does this mean?" The reply came swiftly. "I remember that day. The woman taking the photo had a dog named Masha that wouldn't stop barking. You whispered a joke in my ear to make me laugh. You told me someday this would matter. I didn't understand then. Now I do. We are not bound by time, Anna. We are bound by something stronger." She clutched the letter like it might disappear. Somewhere inside her, a certainty grew. This wasn't a correspondence anymore. It was a reunion. Of something she hadn't realized she'd lost. The letterbox had become a fixture in her life, and yet, it still had secrets. It happened late one night, after another reread of David's latest poem. Anna was turning the wooden box in her hands, fingers tracing its corners, when her nail caught on a small seam at the bottom, a barely visible line she'd never noticed. Her breath caught. She used a flat-edged tool to gently pry it open. Inside, hidden in a secret compartment, lay a pendant. Silver. Smooth. Heavy for its size. Oval-shaped, with a delicate hinge. When she touched it, a subtle warmth spread through her fingers, not the warmth of metal, but something alive. It pulsed. She opened it. Inside, intricate clockwork. Tiny gears that spun slowly, as if measuring something older than seconds. Not a watch. A heart. Around the rim was an engraving, worn but still legible. To cross, only with love. She held it tightly, unsure why tears were rising. She didn't know what it was. Not yet. But she knew it mattered. She placed it under her pillow that night. And then the dreams began. In the dream, the attic mirror shimmered like water. She stood before it, pendant glowing softly in her hand. A hum filled the room, low, deep, ancient. She stepped forward and pressed her palm to the glass. It rippled. It opened. She fell through. And woke up with the pendant clutched to her chest. Not metaphorically, physically. She sat up in bed, breath ragged. The room looked normal. The world seemed the same. But the pendant ticked faintly, like a clock she could only hear through memory. The next morning, she stood before the mirror in the attic, wide awake. Sunlight streamed in through the cracks. She whispered, "David," and raised the pendant. The mirror didn't move. Not yet. But something inside her shifted. The air felt thinner, closer. Time didn't feel like a line anymore. It felt like a door. And now, she knew how to find the key. She stepped through the mirror just after midnight. The moment her foot crossed the threshold, the air changed. Heavier. Warmer. Sharper, somehow. The scent of old wood, smoke, and distant rain filled her lungs. She stumbled slightly, catching herself on a beam. She was still in the attic, but it wasn't hers anymore. The walls were barer. The dust older. The window panes rippled with imperfections in the glass. Outside, a streetcar rumbled past, old-fashioned, clanging and bright. A vendor shouted in Ukrainian. Somewhere nearby, someone played a violin. She'd done it. Anna wandered the city in a daze, her coat and dress just vintage enough to pass. She clutched the pendant tightly, afraid it would vanish if she looked away. She remembered the places David had written about, the cafe, the alleyway, the bookstore above the printing press. That's where she found him. Misto Sliv. A dim, narrow cafe with thick curtains and cracked tables. He sat by the window, hunched over a notebook, scribbling furiously in pencil. She watched him for a moment, heart in her throat. Then he looked up. And everything in her life before that moment vanished. He stood slowly. "Anna," he said. It wasn't a question. It was a homecoming. Neither of them moved for a long moment. Then, a single step. Another. And she was in his arms. He smelled like ink and dust and something floral, violets, maybe. They didn't speak much that first night. He brought her upstairs to the flat above the bookstore. A single bed. A stove. Books stacked like barricades. She looked at it all like someone recognizing a place from a dream. They sat on the bed, knees touching. He took her hand and asked, "Do you remember this yet?" "No," she whispered. "But I will." He laughed. Soft. Overwhelmed. They made tea. Burned the toast. danced to a gramophone waltz even though neither knew how. He read her the poems she already knew by heart. They kissed by candlelight. And when they finally lay down, he whispered, "I've waited for you so long. I thought I'd made you up." She buried her face in his neck. "No," she said. "We made each other real." They had 3 days. 3 days that felt infinite, full of rain-warmed cobblestones, shared pastries, half-remembered lullabies. David took Anna to every corner of his world, the library where he first published a poem, the bench where he once cried after a rejection, the street market where he bought the violets he tucked behind her ear. They wrote together. Made love slowly, reverently. Time ceased to matter. Until she saw her. It was late. Anna had stepped out for air, letting David nap. She wandered to a nearby square lit by gas lamps. That's where the woman stood, still and silent at the end of a narrow lane. Cloaked in black. Eyes like smoke. "You crossed," the woman said. Her voice was neither young nor old. Just tired. Anna stood still. The pendant burned at her chest. "You're disrupting the weave." "What are you?" Anna whispered. "A stitcher," she said. "We keep time from unraveling. You weren't meant to come here." "I had to." "You love him," the woman said, like it was a diagnosis. Anna nodded. "Then you must leave. If you stay, he dies soon. And not gently. 1,000 strands collapse because of this one thread. But if I leave, he disappears anyway." The woman didn't answer. She only stared. Back at the flat, Anna stood in the doorway, watching David sleep. One arm flung over the blanket. His chest rising and falling. She traced every inch of his face with her eyes. He stirred, blinked, and saw her tears. "What is it?" he asked. She didn't speak. Just climbed into bed and held him like the answer she'd never stop needing. That night, they made love as if time itself was watching. In the morning, she told him everything. He listened without fear. "I'd rather lose you this way," he said, "than never have known you at all." And so, with her heart caving in, Anna took one last look at his face. Then walked back to the mirror. And stepped through. The attic was exactly as she'd left it, and completely wrong. Anna stood in the silence, the world around her too sharp, too modern. The hum of fluorescent lights buzzed above. The city outside roared with 1,000 engines. But inside, everything was still. She turned slowly, hoping for something, a sign, a letter, a shadow of him. But there was nothing. The pendant around her neck felt cold now. Dead. David was gone. She collapsed onto the floor beside the letterbox. Her body was there, but her soul wasn't. It was still curled up in a narrow bed above a bookstore in a time she couldn't reach. The next days passed in a fog. She went to work, smiled when spoken to, archived documents. At night, she reread his letters like scripture. Memorized the curve of his handwriting. Tried to recall the weight of his fingers on her spine. The rhythm of his breathing beside her. The photograph remained on her desk. She stared at her own face from 1924, wondering, how could something so real be so impossible? She searched the archives again. Still the same, David Lushko, poet, disappeared in 1925. Presumed dead. No remains found. No trace of her. It was as if she'd been gently erased. So she wrote the story. She changed her name. Made it a novel. A whimsical tale about time and longing. People called it romantic. Poetic. Unbelievable. That part stung. Because it had happened. Every word. But she hadn't written it for them. Months passed. Snow returned. Kyiv glowed with holiday lights. She climbed the attic stairs one night to dust the mirror. Ritual, not hope. But as her hand brushed the box, something caught. Paper. New. A letter. Unaged. Crisp. Ink still fresh. Her fingers trembled as she opened it. Anna. I have rewritten my destiny. I am now in the future. Find me. Asterisk. A pressed violet slipped from the fold. She didn't cry. She ran. The mirror shimmered again. This time, when Anna stepped through, it didn't feel like falling backward. It felt like stepping between notes in a melody she already knew by heart. And when she landed, softly, without sound, the air felt changed. Kyiv. But not the Kyiv she knew. Not David's Kyiv either. This was something else. The cobblestones beneath her boots were familiar, but overhead, sleek trams glided past on silent tracks. Neon signs shared space with hand-painted ones. Children in wool coats played hopscotch beside a holographic newsstand. Gas lamps stood beside solar trees. Time had melted together. She wandered the city, dazed but not afraid. She followed instinct, memory, love. And eventually, it led her to a square. Not on any map she knew. Silent, yet alive. In its center stood a statue. Not a soldier, not a saint. A poet. The figure leaned on a stack of books, one arm outstretched toward something unseen, or someone. Her heart beat so loud it drowned the world. She turned. And there he was. Older. His hair streaked with gray. His coat modern. But the eyes, those eyes, hadn't changed at all. He saw her. He smiled. You found me. She didn't speak. Just ran to him. He caught her, arms around her like they'd never let go. Like they hadn't. He kissed her forehead, gently. I waited, he said. I wrote. I lived. And eventually, time bent. How, she whispered. The woman in black, he said. She came again. Told me if I waited, if I kept living, kept writing, the weave would mend. And you'd find me. She laughed through her tears. You rewrote your destiny. He nodded. For you. They stood in the square as dusk fell, the statue casting long shadows beside them. This time, they didn't count the minutes. Because time no longer owned them. They didn't need the mirror anymore. It stayed where it was, silent, dormant, a relic of what had been. But Anna and David no longer reached for it. Their time was here now, in a Kyiv stitched together from old and new. They found an apartment not far from the Dnipro River. 6th floor. No elevator. David called the climb daily penance for love. Anna called it ridiculous. But they laughed all the same. Mornings were rituals. She brewed tea. He scribbled poems on napkins, receipts, the backs of envelopes, anything that didn't run from ink. They hung his lines on the fridge like talismans. Evenings were walks through their ever-changing city. Sometimes they passed the museum. She would glance up at the attic window. He would squeeze her hand. They never spoke of the woman in black. Or the choice Anna made. Or the cost. Not because it hurt. But because they didn't need to. Their love had passed the test of time, not once, but twice. What could words add to that? David published again. Quietly. Under his real name. Anna became a curator, not of dusty things but of memory. She spoke at schools about the power of story. She never mentioned letters. But sometimes, when a student asked if she believed in magic, she would smile and say, I believe in echoes. And every now and then, they'd find a flower on their doorstep. A violet. Pressed. Perfect. Like time saying, I remember you. And on those nights, Anna would light a candle. Write a letter. Seal it with wax. And David would say, for me. And she'd answer, always.